Changing button colors is not what CRO is. Changing a website design is not what CRO is. It's looking at like what is cause and effect, and then how can we as marketers create a new effect from behaviors that are currently happening on the site without having to inject an absorbent amount of cash into it.
Today's guest has been in the marketing game for over 15 years. He has been a general manager for companies like Digital Marketer and even built his own successful 7-figure agency.
You want to make sure that it's really easy for that person with a hurt tooth to get through that funnel so they can book that damn meeting. They're not thinking anymore. They're not being rational. They're not doing anything. So you have to think, have you made it so simple that somebody in like severe pain could follow through with this thing?
Remember, when something is free, you are the product.
CRO is not just split test tinkering and those things. It's genuinely trying to improve the experience such that people can get to their desired end result with the least amount of friction possible, which is a win for them and it's a win for the business.
Today's guest has been in the marketing game for over 15 years. He has been a general manager for companies like Digital Marketer and even built his own successful 7-figure agency. He has trained thousands of marketers in CRO, analytics, funnel architecture, email marketing, and marketing strategy, including myself. He's run hundreds and hundreds of tests in the B2B, B2C space and has analyzed over 3,000 tests from more than $10 to $15 million of ad spend across pretty much every industry. Today, he is going to show us how to master CRO, conversion rate optimization, and show us how we can get more leads and more sales without having to spend more on traffic. Justin Rondeau, welcome to the Masters of Lead Generation podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, ALISHA. I'm so very excited to dive in.
Yay. We're just going to be a couple of CRO nerds shooting the shit, talking about stuff. And just so everybody knows, because I remember I told you this story at one of Ryan Dice's masterminds, but how I very first got into CRO was watching your presentation, your course, the Digital Marketer course. And that was my foundations of CRO, and all of that I know is still in my brain today. So it's really freaking cool to have you here today.
It's actually, I remember, and I told you this when you told me this, it's like recounting the story of a story. But when you said that to me, I had to grab Ryan and go, see, at least somebody took it. Because that one, when we were running promotions at Digital Marketer, was always kind of the worst seller because it was the nerd seller. And we're going to talk, I know, a lot about that today, of like what CRO is for and who it's for. But it's always been kind of like the neglected like craft. And I think misunderstood craft. I refer it like lovingly as like the flossing of marketing. Like most people, don't want to do it, but their dentist is like, hey, you got to. That is what it is. And so I know this may not be the sexiest episode of all episodes, and I'm selling it great right now. But you're going to get a ton out of it in terms of like how you can actually apply it to your business and get more from your current efforts. So it's all about squeezing more out of it.
Amazing. And the thing about sexiness is like making money is sexy, and this is the stuff that makes the money, but it's highly misunderstood. Like I really find like the average bear doesn't quite get it. So how would you explain CRO, conversion rate optimization, to a noob? Help us out, to a big newbie.
Yeah. So a big newbie that's like, hey, I heard of this thing called CRO. I'm supposed to do it, or someone told me to do CRO. I think the first thing that like and they're like, what is it? How do I do it? First thing I explain is it's really a matter of understanding the customer journey and then finding the optimal points to have the biggest impact. So it's a multidisciplinary kind of like discipline, and it requires kind of like you digging into finding opportune areas, not trying to just spray and pray, but you're looking into being more strategic. You're becoming a surgeon effectively. It's like, how do we get more from this? I think the people who do this stuff the best are the marketers that like they kind of have either limited budgets, kind of like limited scope with either clients or those things. And they're trying to be scrappy. They're trying to MacGyver. They're going to try to make like, like some sort of device out of a snorkel and a seashell. Like, how do I make this thing happen? That's kind of how it starts there. But it's really about, optimizing to get really the most out of the user. So and this is going to sound really kind of crass, but it's extracting value from the consumer. At that point, you're trying to find the most efficient ways to do that. So it's all about efficiency in things that you can prove and that have a statistically significant level that can then scale for the business. So it's not just about like coming up with new ideas or new assertions, be like, I want to test it. Like that's not what CRO is. Changing button colors is not what CRO is. Changing like a website design is not what CRO is. It's looking at like what is cause and effect, and then how can we as marketers like create a new effect from behaviors that are currently happening on the site without having to inject, an absorbent amount of cash into it.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you would agree or disagree when I'm trying to explain it to people, because they're like, oh, we want to do like the CRO and split test and the bloody button color. No, that is like, I just take that behind the shed and
I had one, and you'd be surprised even to this day. Like it is so pervasive. I won't name names in this scenario, but I got a message from somebody I know that was like, "Hey, Justin, I just saw this stat that somebody posted on LinkedIn, and it was like button colors with associated conversion rates." And the Amazon color one was like super low, and like this, and I was like, hold on. If we're going to be taking like looking at this and taking any value from this, wouldn't we then say that Amazon would have a bad conversion rate? Like that's what you're telling me at this point. If colors mattered to that degree, then why would anybody have that color ever? It doesn't make any sense. The only thing that comes down to, it's like with buttons, the only rule is, does it look like a button? Does it stand out? Is it clickable? And is it the right link? Those are the only, and what's the CTA? But those are the only things that matter. The color never matters. And it's just so interesting that I still see those infographics that are like, you should use green because it means go. It's like, it doesn't. Stop. It never meant that. It never ever meant that. And it still just comes up to this day, which is a bummer. And I think that's like a failure on like really like CRO experts and those people that are advocates in the space that are doing this stuff, that we haven't properly articulated like what's the work that's being done and what's the work that matters. So, and that's why these things still live on. It's just that needs to go behind the tool shed. Just get out of here. Get out of here. I agree.
Skit. And and so to finalize the definition, again, agree or disagree, when people come to me like, I want to do CRO, I want to do split testing, I always say it's conversion rate optimization. We're trying to fix something that already works, or we're trying to fix something that might not be working, but it's on a solid foundation. And so because I specialize in landing pages and funnels, it's like, baby girl, you don't even know your target market. You don't even have an offer. You don't even have a good headline. You don't like, I can tell you right now, we need to roll out some heuristic stuff. And I would have learned this from you. Heuristic equals rule of thumb. We got to do that first, and then we can play CRO together.
Exactly. No, that's 100%. It. CRO is kind of like the last 10%. It's when you have these things in place, how do you get more out of it? If you're missing core fundamentals, you're just making something you're making something bad slightly less bad. Like, and it's an incremental gain, and you'll never get to where you want to go. So I 100% agree. I think heuristics are a huge win when people are missing just the basics. Like, would you I would say this to a business owners, would you rather me run an iterative test on your landing page just so I can statistically significantly know that this one thing had an impact, or Mr. and Mrs. Business Owner, what if I just change the stuff that I know is broke? It's just broke. What if we change that, and then we can get into the iterative game? And that's when you're starting to really kind of like to game the system at that point. Like especially when you have a lot of traffic and you know your ICP, you know that the page structure is sound, you know that you have the right types of hooks. And in some cases you might just be like, hey, I don't know which hook I want to use now. It's like, great. Now you have a surplus on things. You can start running different types of tests, different types of framing work, and all these different things that you can do.
And soon we're going to talk about how to choose the tests, how to roll them out. And you said pre-call, like we don't have to be these crazy research institutes. This is for real business owners to get real results. Before we get into that, what are your biggest misconceptions that you see around CRO when you're talking maybe more in the lead gen space specifically? Yeah,
I think, the biggest misconceptions, we talked about a few of them already. I think that that people think us like in a lot of cases, like, oh, if I just test like this small idea is going to have like these big results. It tends to not. I also don't think you need to have like massive redesigns to like dictate or justify your existence. There are things that can be done that are around messaging. And messaging is kind of what matters most, to be quite honest, when you're looking at how you're setting up pages. I think you'd agree with me there too. I've seen a lot of your talks in terms of like the hook is pretty much it. Like if you get that right, the rest follows. I think the other misconception is that like one is that CRO is just split testing. It's not. There's again the heuristic analysis you can do the qualitative research, the like the customer studies, those types of things that you can do to add into your research and then to make best guesses. I think also that CRO is split testing, and split testing is the only way to actually prove that something is working. It's not. I think sequential testing is absolutely fine. I do it a lot, especially if you have oodles of data and in the back end, you kind of know how things work. And if you don't have enough data, you shouldn't be split testing. Like you need to be running types of sequential tests. And then the last thing is that you always need a focus. Like if and this is for low traffic only, just going to say this, I don't want to get clipped weird on this one, but if you don't have enough traffic to run tests like on like the main conversion element, whether that be like meetings booked, form fills, those things, say you're not driving enough traffic, you can use micro conversions. So things like clicks and those types of things to give you an idea about how things are performing based off of the change. So if say you have low traffic, you're running a low traffic homepage test, maybe you're getting, less than 100 meetings booked a month or something like that, but you want to try out some things. I generally would just say like, just switch things out completely. But if you were to run a split test in those cases, you could look at what's the goal you're trying to achieve with that split test. Is it trying to move people down the funnel? Did you successfully do that? Yes or no? Cool. Then you can kind of move on and go from there. But you do want to try and like, you'll have low numbers at this point, but you'll want to look at like, how did that impact like the lowest level metrics? But it's a way to get started if you're stuck and you're just like, I don't know what to do. That's been a way for kind of like low traffic people to do it. So biggest misconceptions is that CRO equals split testing. It doesn't. That split testing is really the only definitive way to do things. It's not. And that things like, customer research, heuristic analysis, and all those types of things are absolutely valid and kind of like the things that you should be doing first, and that you don't need to hold yourself to this like rigorous split testing calendar to like prove that, oh, if we say they versus us, like it's going to make us a lot of money, because that doesn't functionally matter.
Mm-hmm. And because you and I are CRO nerds, I'll pull it out a little bit so that I'm like, okay, if someone hasn't watched all of Rondeau's stuff and been doing CRO forever, when we say sequential A/B split tests, I'll say like, okay, multivariate is when you test a lot of shit. That's like what Amazon is doing, like testing a lot of different things. This is just me doing like a quiz on your course, basically, doing lots of different things. There's A/B testing where you're typically testing like a headline, like it's two things, A versus B, which one wins. And then there's sequential, which is where you launch a test, but you just launch a new variation over a set period of time. And all of those types of tests, you want to wait until it is statistically significant, meaning don't fuck your shit up by rolling out a winner that's not a real winner.
Exactly.
Elaborate.
And the big thing with any of these, when you're running these, like before you run any test ever, like you need to set a finite time for when it's supposed to end, right? So whether you're doing a multivariate, which multivariate is not just looking at a bunch of things that have changed, but it's like the combination of how those things play together. In order to run any of those types of things, you need to be in like the top like 10% of like trafficked sites, like to get anything valid. So if you're doing lead gen work, you're likely not going to be doing anything multivariate. I wouldn't suggest it. It's too complex. And almost every CRO report has talked about like the use of multivariate tests kind of going down, like in terms of people not even using them anymore, even when they have the traffic. It's overly complicated. But regardless of it's a single split test, sequential one, you want to set to yourself like you want to ask yourself, what is kind of the minimum like impact you expect to see from this campaign? And there's a lot of calculators out there that'll help you do that. So if you're running this test, can you expect to see at minimum a 10% lift? If you don't believe you can, why are you doing it? Don't do that. If you don't expect to have any gain from this, there's no point in testing other than you trying to prove a point, or you're just trying to be like overly studious. Like there's really no point in doing that. And so you need to ask yourself when you're setting up tests, like what is the at least minimum impact that needs to be seen by this in order to have a result in a given period of time. So for instance, if say you're running a lead gen campaign, I'll use based like easy numbers here, you get, 100 conversions a day on that. You then need to kind of like just plug those numbers into like one of these nice little calculators and say, in order for me to like, how long would it take for me to have statistically significant results to, like a 95% like level, that I'll have that I can see a minimum 10% increase. And it'll tell you like it'll take 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. If you're going anything outside of 4 weeks, don't even schedule it. But any of these types of tests require a set schedule. And the reason for that is there are 3 very possible like outcomes to a test. Actually, there's only 3 outcomes to a test. Sometimes people generally think there's 2. You either win or you lose. Null happens more than anything. Null meaning nothing happened. There was no change. There was like anything that was observed. There was nothing. You just you didn't gain, you didn't lose, whatever. So if you don't have a timeline set and you think that it's always win or lose, you'll want to just keep running that test into perpetuity until you see a result that you want to see, whether it's a win or a loss. You need to be able to accept that if it is not done in this timeline, you need to stop it and you can move on, right? Mm-hmm. So when you're running these types of tests and you're kind of like putting these things out and you're picking what you want to do, whether it's a multivariate, which just don't do it. If you're running an A/B, if you're running multiple variations, so A, B, C, D versions, they require significantly more traffic. And then if you're running sequential, same deal. But yeah, I think that's the big piece. Like know your timelines and stick to it. You can have a kill switch, like if you're like, hey, something broke, like, and again, we're not research institutions. Like you'd be like, I put this version out and it like tanked like by 30% in the first 2 days. I wouldn't say I'm just going to keep this running. I'm probably wouldn't do that. I'd probably like something ain't right, and I just pull it. You need to be pragmatic, right? But yeah, when it comes to split testing and statistical significance, it's all about the number of conversions you can achieve in a specific period of time that you need to calculate prior to running your test, or you're just kind of doing like random acts of testing at that point.
And I want to get into that shortly, like how to come up with ideas, how to know what to test, how to prioritize ideas, because not every idea should be tested. But before we get into that, what you just said before, I think that businesses put a lot of pressure on marketers or agencies for every split test to get results, because you're not always right. It's like you're taking a lot of swings and then you'll have a big one that hits it out of the park. And it's like, holy shit, this changed the game for us. But it's not always right. And so when I'm working with my team in the lead gen stuff, it's like, just have a good hypothesis and what can we learn if it loses? Because failure equals feedback and feedback equals knowledge and knowledge equals power. So it's like, can we still learn something if we don't win in that test, right? And then the other thing is that I'm interested to hear your thoughts on. The other big thing that I see people getting wrong is they optimize for the wrong metrics. So especially in lead generation, everyone wants to get their landing page conversion rate as high as humanly possible. Yeah. But CPL and conversion rate doesn't affect your P&L. And so for us, we're always tracking down to qualified lead to sales time, what a closing. So do you have any tips around how to make sure that we're measuring a North Star metric, or what should we be looking at? And then let's get into how to do it.
Yeah. So I've always been like, the deeper you can go into the funnel while maintaining like statistically significant results is as deep as you go. Like, so whether it's like, if you're talking about, are these qualified leads? It's like, cool. So you can set your parameters. You could say, hey, we got 50 leads, only 25 from variant A, 25 of them were qualified. Okay, cool. You only got 25 leads. So, and that's what you should be kind of like measuring against, assuming you have the volume in place. So, I guess that goes back to like how Ronnie Kohavi, who was like, he ran like all the stuff from like Bing back in the day, now they're Microsoft, whatever. But when he was on their search team, and he was one of the, he's kind of like one of the big kahunas when it comes to like conversion optimization and those types of things. And he always talked about having like the correct overall evaluation criterion. And even everybody, like, people mess this up a lot. Like, what are you effectively trying to influence in this case? And then, like you're saying, like, there's kind of these top of funnel like areas that like, oh yeah, I just want my landing page conversion rate. Can I get it through the roof? Like we went from a 2% to a 5% like of form fills. It's like, great. Like, but how many of those like, how did they go down the line? So were they qualified? Did these calls close? What's going on and what's the feedback loop into these? So making sure that in your test design, you're able to see that is going to be kind of like the bigger piece, especially when you're pushing off to sales teams. You need to make sure that you have an effective feedback loop to know like where they've come from and kind of set those breadcrumbs accordingly. But like I was saying earlier too, like some people don't have enough traffic to be like, am I influencing the qualified leads? Maybe because just volume is not where it's at. It's like, okay, well, if you're able to influence, like say you run a split test and like this variation is getting me this many more meetings at a statistically significant rate, then you can kind of look post hoc and say, okay, of this group of people, did we see more or less like purchases? You might not have like the percent lift on what you're seeing from qualified leads or like a true like statistically significant percent lift, but you will see something. It'll help you understand like further down. So whether you're doing post hoc analysis or factoring it into your test because you have enough volume to get down to that level, like you have to pick and choose, but you need to be very clear about like what are those winning metrics for you and what you're trying to measure and what you're trying to influence. And then while you're doing test design, to make sure that the things that you're actually changing would have an influence down the line. Because when you start adding in like the human equation, like if you're looking at how many people did we close, like, well, did I go to Jimmy? Because Jimmy's an idiot. Like maybe he just can't close them. Right. So you need to like set those parameters and set them very, very clear and then isolate them as much as you can, depending on the level of like, depending on your level of certainty that you want to have in these scenarios.
And have limited variables. And there's two things that you've mentioned, like, or you've kind of like said, like, do you have enough traffic? If you have enough traffic, and then statistical significance. For both of those, you can pretty much just Google and get like CRO calculators or statistical significant calculators, right? So the answer is like, why do I need to have enough traffic? Because otherwise it won't be statistically significant. If you only push through 5 conversions, let's say, that's like, and it's like, oh, well, it's this one converts at 75% and this one's 25%. Yeah, but that's not a big enough sample pool for what we need. And then if you're like, oh, okay, but my variation, so you'll have a control, that's what you have now, and then you'll have a variation. It's like, my variation is winning, but yeah, you've only had 3 conversions on that event. So I don't know if you have a rule of thumb off the top of your head for number of traffic and like what you would consider statistically significant, and then we'll just send people to the calculators so we can get into the fun part, the ideas.
Yeah, use calculators for sure. They're all out there. Every single testing tool has them. They don't just have statistical significance ones. They also have like timeline ones, and those things make your life way easier. Like those are good. But if my rule of thumb is like, if you need at least 100 conversions for whatever that main thing you're trying to influence per variation that you're running, and you need to be able to get those within, I'd say they need to be within a 4-week period, ideally a 2-week period. So if you have low traffic, needs to be done within a month. If you can't do it within a month, stop, because most cookies refresh after that period in time. And it's just the velocity is never going to be there to see the gain that you're looking for. But it's generally, rule of thumb, about 100 conversions per variation during the test period. That's bare minimum. But at least a good kind of like starting point.
And if we can't do that, we should either be looking at heuristic, rule of thumb, hey, something's broken, and potentially doing the sequential testing where it's like, I have a feeling this offer's not going to nail it, but I'm not going to get 100 conversions in a month to actually get bare minimum data. I'm just going to have to put this offer out there and send all of the traffic to that within like a 2-week time frame and start to gauge the difference. And that's how we would do it instead, right?
Yeah, that's how you do it. And then also just look at micro conversions as well to validate. Be like, all right, like when we had this other variation, our click-through rate was trash. Now it's better. Like those are things that can also help inform it. And yeah, it's funny. It's funny having this conversation. I'm having like deja vu from a conversation I had I got fired from a company because of this same conversation I had when I was
trauma alert.
I know, God. Like I was consulting it was a personalization platform, and they were really pushing their A/B testing tool, and they would be like, everybody can do it and these things. And I was like, you absolutely cannot. Like, and I was trying to explain on it. And then I got like a call from their CMO that was like, hey, we're canceling your contract. You're done. But it blows my mind that even like the technologies out there are going to peddle like, oh yeah, you can just use us to get these insights that are going to be not great. Like, I think everyone's probably heard this at some point, especially if you're in this space, like in the marketing space, like the only thing worse than no data is like wrong data. Right. Mm-hmm. And so, because you're making the case of like, oh, I'm pointing to this thing that's saying, it's telling me that this is the indicator that I should be moving in this direction. And then you could be moving completely backwards or in the wrong spot. So, if you're new to this and you're kind of getting to the space and you're like, I don't think I have enough data coming in for me to actually pull this thing off. Listen to yourself there and really lean into some of the heuristic things. Like, I'm one of the few like CROs, I guess, in the space that are, and actually, Alicia, I think you'd agree with me on this one, that, I believe in best practices, not because they're best. I believe in best practices because they're common, and what's common is what's understood, and what's understood converts. Mm. So that's why heuristics are so important and so powerful. So don't fall into the trap to be like, I should be split testing stuff. Like, sometimes you don't have to. Sometimes you just need to get these things out. And even when you have traffic, like currently, like at Search Atlas, granted it's not in the lead gen space, like I just know we have a test running literally right now that I am doing it as a sequential test because of all of the intricacies that can happen during the sign-up process, that there could be false positives that come from something breaking or something not coming through. I'm like, I have a buttload of data in the back end about how people perform over the last 12 months. Mm. I will be able to see a change, whether it be good, bad, otherwise, from a sequential test. So you don't have to look at these as alternatives just for people with low traffic. You also want to look at it from a case of like getting things to market. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And people vote with their wallets or getting that data, right? Yeah. I think as marketers, we can like sit around and like, oh yes, like this is what's going to work and this is going to work so good. And then we get all like worked up together and it's like, just freaking launch it and put it out there. And probably the same as you, I've made every mistake under the sun, right? I don't even know how many, but it's minimum 600 funnels and landing pages, minimum. And then I've watched so many like, heat maps and scroll videos, and like I've just watched so much, so a bit of that helps when like you get better and better. But I've also made a lot of dumb mistakes, like I've turned off tests too soon, and then and these are on like multi-million-dollar funnels, not so much anymore when I was a bit younger, and it's like, shit, what's gone wrong? But luckily I had a changelog, so I could like look in the data and go. And so this is just so everybody knows, always have a changelog, because then you can see when your results dipped, you go back to your changelog and you're like, okay, that test was not a winner. I did something wrong there. Revert it back. Now let's get into the fun stuff, which is how to come up with ideas, but also how to prioritize ideas and how to make sure you choose the best ideas. Because the best part about marketing is everyone can do your job better than you. So everybody has an opinion about the funnel. And this was really fun. I started in client side to come in and like build out this funnel team. They're running multi-million-dollar funnels, and anybody in the company could touch the funnels. They could make changes when they felt like it when I first started. And I had to like come in and like slap hands and be like, don't you put mascara on my baby, and implement like pie frameworks and changelogs and those sorts of things. But we'll get into that. For now, how do we come up with a good idea, sir? Please tell us.
Yeah, I think the first idea is going to come from, and this is from more of a reactive testing framework, I guess, but like where do you need work? What it's almost like, how do I help myself? So I think it's first in identifying like where are the holes in your funnel. So that's really the first step. So are you running into an issue on your landing page? Are you running into an issue on the checkout page? Are you running into an issue like on your upsell? Like where are you running into issues? Are you getting people to fill out a form but not to book a meeting? Okay, that's a different problem. So, and you need to define those. So like if you're like, hey, like I'm having actually a really hard time getting people after they fill out a form to pick a time on my Calendly. Okay, why are you running a homepage test or a landing page test then? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. There's a few things you could do, I guess, to frame it a little bit better. Like would be like, after you submit, like you'll pick your time here, or maybe something like that. But you need to contextualize kind of your ideas to the thing you're trying to influence. And the further you get away from it, the harder it is to influence that thing. So if you're having issues with, I just can't get people to fill out that initial form. Like, on my landing page to book a meeting with me. It's like, great. That's an easy one. The ideas then start coming from, like, you start pulling data from, Google Analytics, like what's kind of going on with just the engagement on the page, heat maps, session recordings, those types of things will help to understand, like, what the heck are they even doing on here? One of my favorite examples, and this one's old school. Like, I think there's this blog post can't exist anymore. I feel like I've gotten old. This is weird. Self-reflection time.
There's too much trauma on this episode for you. I'm so sorry.
I know. Like, I don't talk about CRO as much anymore. It's kind of one of those just baked in my brain. But I was running a test, and this was one of the oldest iterations of the digital marketer site, and this was one of the easiest homepage tests and easiest wins I've ever had in my life. And it wasn't because I had this great hypothesis or this great idea. I just knew, like, click-through rate from homepage throughout the site was to further parts of the site was down. I put a heat mapping tool on the website. I go through the page, and we had standard headline type thing, headline CTA. Then we had a stacked image of, like, the inside of our application. It was like our examples of execution plans is what they called them at the time. And each one of those individual things had a card, a title, and a CTA. So you had them in a 3x7, 3x6, and it was just a screenshot of this. When you looked at the heat map recording, everybody was clicking the individual CTAs based off of the thing they were interested in, even though it was a single image that was linked absolutely nowhere. It was just an image to be like, this is our execution plan library. Everybody's trying to click those to try and get to the thing that they want to see. They're like, oh, that's interesting to me. I want to know how to build a retargeting strategy, or I want to know how to do this thing. But they'd click it and couldn't go anywhere. So first test, and this, I probably should have just done a fix, but I wanted to prove a point. I just threw a link to our subscription product, and I think it was $38 or something like that a month. I just threw a link there, and, like, we saw like a 30% uptick in, like, subscriptions when that happened, like almost immediately. And then I got this bright idea, and this is where, like, ideas can go wrong, because, like, you're like, oh, if this worked if they just clicked this to go to this, what if I had an individual link to each one? So a landing page for each one that still sold the same thing. That didn't actually work that well. That one, I don't remember how, I didn't, like, lose in terms of, like, click-throughs on that, but it didn't beat the, like, more standard, like, here's one of our execution plans. You get this when you sign up for everything. Like, that funnel worked really well on the homepage. When I tried to specialize it too much, it got too intricate. And so the lesson, I think, there, it's like, there's easy wins that you can find, but then we're going to overthink and over iterate. And if you don't have enough traffic, like, you only get, like, maybe 10, 12 tests a year if you have low traffic. So you need to be very specific in what you pick. I did, in that case, I could have done more because we had more traffic, but that was a waste of a test. I guess not a waste. I learned don't tinker down to, like, hyper specifics at this point yet. The juice wasn't worth the squeeze. So, like, iterations on top of kind of, like, these big ideas that come from things like heat maps, qualitative data, like, you even, like, feedback from your customer support and sales folks, like, people who are talking to, like, they get all of this information, like, making sure that you know, like, what's interesting to people, like, what makes them interested in you, like, what are the things they're saying. Those can turn into really great messaging and framing tests that you can run on your site. So there's no shortage of data. But before you kind of go and say, like, oh my gosh, like, what do I listen to? It's just all this noise. Like, you need to focus, and you focus on specifically where does it need some love? Where does your page need some love? And then kind of work backwards from that.
Yeah, so it's like step 0. Should you even be running a split test? Exactly. We've spoken about that. Step 1, well, if yes, which part of the funnel should we be focusing on? Where's broken? So to give everybody a little bit of a data benchmark, in our agency, we do a lot of book a call funnels. Like, our job is, like, we work in finance, so we're either getting people to just apply for some sort of loan, we work in property investment, a lot of that high ticket stuff for lead gen, or we're booking calls, right? So our landing pages, we're typically ideally getting, like, 10 to 25%, depending on the industry, depending on how much qualification. Then there's the form. So, like, that's, like, the form submission. Then we will have a calendar booking for people who are a fit. We're looking for 40 to 80%. Like, that's, or more, but, like, that's, like, a minimum. And then there's, like, show up rates. Then there's your emails, whatever. So that's all of the different parts of the funnel. And then just to hit on something that you said, okay, so where are the holes? And this kind of leads us into, well, how do we decide which holes? There's qualitative and then there's quantitative data, right? So just because you're saying big words, and I'm just going to break them down because I've had the benefit of watching all of the stuff that you've ever made ever. But quantitative is the numbers, like the what. But the qualitative really tells us the why. And you need both of them to create a good picture. So the quantitative will be like your Google Analytics, your GA4s, that sort of stuff. You go high level, whatever, that sort of stuff. Your qualitative is talking to the sales team, social listening, surveys, all of these things. And that tells you the why. That puts a story together where it's like, okay, my calendar bookings are down or my show up rate's down. I can see that number, but that doesn't tell me why. I've done my research and now I can create a hypothesis to come up with a good split test, which brings us to test step 2, how to start coming up with test ideas. Back to you. Talking stick back to you.
Oh, I wish I had a stick now. Probably have one somewhere. My office is a mess. You actually kind of nailed it already. Like a lot of the like test hypothesis or the test idea is going to come from like when you've evaluated the area, you're looking at the deficiency. So you're saying like, say for instance, you notice that you have a bad calendar sign up rate after the form. Right. So the first thing I'd ask is like, well, what's that experience like when they hit that form? And so you should go through it or watch session recordings of somebody hitting that form and then seeing what happens there. And then what you're going to like, there's no real good, like, aha, this is the exact idea. But what you're going to start seeing are patterns. Is you're going to see patterns of like where people are dropping off and where they're having difficulties. And so could be like, maybe that next page is, you're just doing a flat Calendly form that doesn't show, and it's the end of the month and it only shows that full month's level of meetings. It's not showing April's meetings. It's just showing March's. So, well, no wonder you have nothing booked for like April, like the first 2 weeks in April, because nobody can actually book, right? Though, and that for everybody, that's not a test. That is just fix it, right? It's broke. This is one of those things where I think, and where we get things so mixed up in like the CRO world. Like I love the CRO space, but we're sometimes a bunch of like finicky nerds, and we get too focused on certain things where it's like, that is a just fix it moment. It is not a like, I need to hypothesize, I need this. No, you just change the booking, like go. Or another test example could be like, I've been noticing that fewer people are showing up to my meetings. My show up rate's garbage. You might be allowing people to book like ad infinitum. Like they can book like months in advance. Of course they're not going to show up. They forgot who the heck you were. Right. So there's certain things that you can diagnose when you start just go through the funnel yourself alone, then start looking what people are doing. And you have to ask yourself, it's like, is this a reasonable expectation for someone to be able to handle like this scenario? And then if you're like, if it's a yes, cool. That's when you start going like, well, how can I improve this? If it's a no, this isn't reasonable, you change it, right? If it is reasonable, but you're still having problems there, that's when you start hypothesizing like, well, what if I framed like what if instead of having like a Calendly form, I created a page that has the form embedded on it with a video telling them a little bit what to expect and trying to like hype them up a little bit more. Okay. That might get them hyped up a bit, might give them a reason to pick a time. You can tell them what to expect. You can give them some homework. You might be able to knock out a couple of things there. Cool. That could be something worth trying. And then you just start kind of like ideating from there. And in the world of just like AI and ChatGPT, you can create some really cool test concepts that you could run through that. You'd be like, hey, I'm running this. I'm running into a deficiency here. This is my business model. This is this. Help. Like you can quite literally start throwing some of those things in there, and then it'll start pumping out just some concept. And some of them it's not going to know because it doesn't know you, but it will start telling you, it'll start giving you the ideas you need to improve the decision-making process for when you can't reasonably say that something is broken. So ambiguity, when there's ambiguity into how something can be improved, that's when you start building hypotheses being like, I'm going to change X. I expect to see Y by this date. And that's kind of the biggie.
I love that. I love that ambiguity. Like, if there's ambiguity, then you test it. And I've had this with my team sometimes where they're like, this is broken. I'm going to test it. Like, so this is not right. I'm going to test it. I'm like, oh, baby girl, I can tell you right now it will improve conversions because it's a bad user experience. And you know that, and I know that. And let's change it. And going back to your calendar booking, we had a client in the medical space, and he does hair transplants, but he had only opened his calendar during business hours.
Oh.
And we were like, okay, so our booking rate's really low. What if, hear me out, you're probably going to have to do after hours and on the weekend, because I just think, and I just know from a human behavior and psychology, which is why this is so important. This is CRO. CRO is not numbers. We're just persuading human behavior. I know that these people aren't going to be booking. And straight away, the booking rate went from something like 40 to 80% from just having the calendar opened in certain spots. I've seen exactly what you said, the reverse. If you have too many slots open, so we usually recommend 3 to 7 days, usually depending if it's B2C or B2B, open with limited spots. Otherwise, there's no value attached to it. It's like, there's an abundance of calls. Whatever, I'm not coming. And there's these already rule of thumbs. Okay. So we have step 0. Should you even run a split test? Step 2, or step 1, where are the holes? Which part of the funnel should we actually be focusing on? Once we know that, it's like, cool, what are the tests? Some stuff, unless there's ambiguity, don't test it. Some stuff we can figure out by looking at quantitative and qualitative data. Some stuff is like going to be big swings and just trying to fix your funnel. Some stuff is fun because you're just trying to beat the control. The control meaning, and that's the stuff that I love, and it just takes time to get there. It's like, okay, how can I beat this headline? How can I beat this thing? And you're getting all of these wins and doing that test. Then I think it comes into, okay, which we haven't spoken about too much yet, but how to prioritize, how to choose. Like, you've got this list of tests now. I have a feeling we do different frameworks, but what do you use to prioritize that?
Yeah, so I always used like a basic like ICE formula with that, where it's like, what's the impact, confidence, ease. What I'd also do, and this is more for like growth experiment ideas versus just like pure, like, actually it would fit in CRO as well, because it doesn't need to just be web oriented. I'd have like a multiplier effect in like my calculation for whether this test would have an impact on things like acquisition, activation, retention. As a play, like, and so I created this when I was at Digital Marketer, and this is how I would prioritize like new concepts or new ideas. And so I'd use 1 to 10 between like impact, confidence, ease, and then have a multiplier like, oh, this is actually going to help for like our acquisition and activation funnels. So we should prioritize this because it's a double dipper that's going to be able to be applied across the board. Or this is just purely acquisition where it would have no multiplying effect. So when I talk about impact, this goes back to what I was talking about earlier, like, if you're like, oh, hey, I'm considering running a test on this page, or I'm considering doing some optimizations on this page, but I really only think it's going to be about a 5% increase. Like, unless you're like a massive company, like, you're wasting your time. So your impact threshold should be like a 10, like this is going to have huge impact. That's like we can see a 50% plus increase in what we'd expect to see, like, and more, 50 to 80, like 50 or 85% plus. Confidence is like, and this one I'm more suspect of now. I think even with this conversation I've had, if you're so confident it's going to win, your test is just a risk mitigator. So I think I might change that part of the formula. I haven't thought about that one in a while. It just kind of popped in my head, like, and I'm arguing with myself, but yeah, if you're so confident, then why the hell are you testing it? Like, that's dumb, actually. Anyways, I'm curious to hear what yours is there.
Maybe it's an ambiguity meter.
Yeah. There might be like a new thing there. And then ease is obviously like, yeah, I think we did. Ease has come down to like, are you going to need like a full development squad to pull this thing off? Or is this something that's like, hey, we can actually literally use a WYSIWYG editor and just get this thing knocked out? So like a 1 would be like, I'm running a headline test and I just need to have good headlines and changing the text using like VWO or some other tool. Like, that's an absolute 1, super, super easy. If you're like, oh, I need to do a full build of a new calendar page that has the proper integration, that I've stylized the form completely, that's going to be doing callbacks there, that's also going to have a video and all these new image assets, that's going to be a lot harder. And so you should factor that in, because again, this is kind of a velocity game. We're trying to beat, most cases we're trying to beat a control. And I'm not a huge baseball fan. My wife is, but I know batting averages tend to be low when you watch like baseball, and like CRO is a low batting average space. If you're batting 20%, you're great. You're great. If two to 3 out of 10 are hitting, you're
a champion.
really ridiculously good at what you do, like hands down. And so, in order to get to those, like in order for those numbers to be meaningful, you need to have higher velocity. So you need to be able to factor in like, what is the ease that I can get this thing out, especially if you have a small team.
I'm going to quickly share. I'm a basic bitch, so I'm just going to show my pie framework. I don't know. I forget his name. It's like Chris Goward or Chris Howard. Have you read the book You Should Test That?
I have.
I don't know.
Me and Chris used to speak a lot on the same page. No, it's not that I don't. I like Chris. Chris is a great guy. I remember he and I had different approaches to how we did things, and we literally were speaking at TNC one year on opposite stages at the same time and teaching like very like similar but different. And then someone's like, "Hey, this guy Chris told me this," and I was like, "Oh, Goward!" And I'm pretty sure the same thing happened there. But no, he's very smart man and has done amazing stuff for the CRO space.
And this is the thing about marketing. It's like an art and a science. There's not one right way to do it. And I very much love and respect you, and a lot of my information comes from there. But then I learn other stuff and I bring it in and I build my own little systems that work for me. And I think some people are really afraid of doing that, or there's like a lot of experts that are happy to die on this hill, and it's like, no, I'm ready to be humbled. Someone come and show me that I can do something better, because I don't want to be right, I want to be the best. Unfortunately, Justin, I'm just always right, so here's my pie framework. But similar to you, I'm like fail every day. It's great. So it's like, okay, what's our idea? What's the hypothesis? So the idea, for anyone who's listening audio, it's like, this is where you explain what your idea is and give a brief description why you think it's actually a good idea. And then the hypothesis, why do you think this test will win and what do you think will happen? I'm thinking the same as you. After this conversation, I might change the pie, but P is potential. How much potential does the task have? Importance, how important is it to your business? And E is ease. How easy will the task be to complete? But why I love the pie framework, and you might be the same, going back to all of these stakeholders wanting to have an opinion, I'm like, yeah, no worries. I'll put it in the pie framework. We'll get a score and I'll see if I run it. And sometimes people do have good ideas, but often everyone has an idea. So it's like, I just find that helps to manage multiple stakeholders, especially when you've got clients or when you're client side, to shut them up.
No, I really like that. I used to really kind of like hate on the pie framework for a while, like that style, but it actually makes way more sense to me now. Like even just after our conversation, where it kind of gets rid of that icky like confidence level where you can have, here's the potential impact I can have. And I really like the I in that now, where it's more like importance on the business, where it's, because I think in the conversion, like the CRO space, like you can get so focused on like, ooh, I can tinker and have these like changes like on the page, but if it doesn't impact like the larger scale business metrics, then who really cares? And then ease, we both agree on there. So I'm more like favorable to that framework now. And the thing I really like that you said, it's like even forcing people to go through that method. I did this like when I had like an idea backlog, forcing somebody to go through that process makes them think through what their brilliant idea even more. And maybe like half of the time they actually stop filling it out because they just realize like, actually, this isn't a tenable idea, or this actually isn't that good, or this won't have the impact that I'm expecting it to, or actually this is, it's forcing them to put it into a framework, and then we'll challenge them, because when we write any of these things, we're challenging ourselves to kind of make sure that we're being consistent with these. So it actually makes it forces them to start thinking more like optimizers and more like people that are interested in the experiment and the growth and how it impacts the business.
And there's so many smart marketers out there who can't explain their idea or what they want to do, right? Like even for like my team or for myself, why should a client trust me to start running split tests if I can't explain this? And I just think that's a really tidy framework to do that. Okay, so let's do what I think are the last two steps, where it'd be run the test and roll out the test. And just before we move ahead, are you good for time?
Yeah, I'm good. Let's do it.
Interrogation continues.
It continues. My internet's going strong. Let's go.
We are killing the game. Okay, how do we run the test? What do you like? Let's debate it.
Oh, so how I run the test, like I said, it'll depend on the level of complexity of some things. Like I'll run a sequential, like just like any low traffic website, if I believe it's going to like speed up the process and I'm consistent and I'm happy with the data set that I have. Most tests that I run are going to be, I'll generally build out, I build out my test calendar. Obviously, I said that's the most important thing. I know how long this test is going to run, barring some sort of like mega like screw up that happens in it, that it's like, nope, this thing's broken. We need to just revert back. I have my kill switch ready. But I'll know how long it's going to be running for. I'll know the overall like evaluation criteria that I'll be looking at that. If it's more than a minimal change on something, I have a new page created and we'll run like split URL tests using like a tool, like one of the split testing tools out there. I've been using VWO forever. I know they just got bought by a PE firm, so I'm guessing they'll be garbage in about 2 years. Just my guess. But I'll continue to use them until then because they have a really great free plan. Like even at my volume, it's free. So everybody should probably check a look at that because there is no more Google Optimize, even though that was even.
Did VWO always have a good free plan, or is that a new thing?
I actually don't. I used to have like this really great sweetheart deal back in the day, so I hadn't used their free plan in I have no idea how long until I realized how expensive their paid plan was, and I was like, yeah, I don't want to pay you guys that. I think they wanted for a basic testing plan like $600 or something a month, and I was like, no, like that's you guys are randomizing traffic. Like you realize what you're, especially for how many users, you're doing a very basic thing. Like I don't know why I would pay you that, but the free plan's great. I think the only limitation on it right now is max 3. You have monthly average users. It's like 50,000 users a month. You should be fine with that. And then it's max 3 variations, which also everybody that's listening to this should probably be fine with. If you're doing more than that, you're probably screwing it up. To be quite honest, but really great setup there. Again, calendars in place. I've made sure I've tested all of my triggers to make sure that it's coming through. I'll use Google Tag Manager, fire off for where I'm at right now, like a free trial trigger, see what's going on there because we're optimizing for that. Then it's generally larger page changes. So 2 pages, just like -B, -C, whatever. Do a split URL test so we're not running into any of the weird things that can happen if you use the visual editors. Visual editors are awesome, and you're gonna feel like this badass coder when you're using them, or non-coder. You're like, I'm so good. I'm in the matrix now, and then I'm a hacker. I'm a hacker, and then you notice oh, that entire section's broken because it manipulates the code, sure, but you might not know what it's gonna do. So generally stick to split URL tests if it's a very basic change, where no CSS needs to change. No font sizes really even need to change. You're doing a headline or an image switch out or something along those lines. I use their editor, but again, following in conjunction with test timelines. But yeah, that's kind of how I set them up. If you have a lot of traffic, one of the fun ones I've been doing lately, this has been I've been running it on, I think that 5 of our top pages right now is just running they're called multi-arm bandit tests. So they're self-optimizing tests that when I have a page structure that I know works, and the only thing that I'm unsure of is how's my hook? How's it going? I got a bunch of cool ones I want to be trying out. I run a multi-arm bandit, it's self-optimizing. What it does is it'll allocate traffic to the different variants that you're running to, and then allocate more traffic to the higher performing one while validating itself against some of the lower performing ones, but making sure to give it less traffic so you're not just doing a split 50-50 where you kind of lose out if you have one that's not working. I did that on our homepage back in Jan. I was pulling back on that to do some more structural tests. And my conversion rates just went to crap. They went to shit. When I was running the multi-arm bandit, just testing out hooks, we saw an aggregate 30% increase in trial signups from our homepage. Just doing that. It was wild. And so that's another just trick if you have a lot of traffic, but those are kind of the arrows you can pull from the quiver. But yeah, generally stick with split URLs if you're doing any sort of intricate testing would be my thing. So,
yeah. Do you ever find that with split URLs, slow loading time is a problem? on the test?
You can get slow loads. You can also get flickers sometimes because like it like loads it and then doesn't. It also, another thing to consider is like GA4 sometimes screws up if you're looking at numbers where the first one gets like like all the traffic, and so you have to kind of like cut it like in half. So when you're doing kind of your math, you're like, oh wait, okay, so version A got 10,000 views, version B got 5,000. Actually, version A only got truly 5,000, but because it loaded when the analytics loaded, it's getting the double count. So there's some intricacies. I'm just used to doing it that way. And generally recommend people do that way. Just know like there could be some issues in how you're tracking, so you need to be aware of them. Where it's not necessarily like an issue with routing at all from those. It's going to be just like how the analytics code is firing. But more times than not, I've seen that work really well. Is kind of going that route, but it does require then a page build. It does require then making sure that there's nothing else broken. But at this stage, it's kind of where I've been hanging.
Awesome. As an alternative solution, because I've done all of that as well. At the moment for our clients, we just use Go High Level.
Oh God, yeah, just do that.
And Microsoft, because you're like a big OG Thanos level CRO person. So for everyone else, it's like, get yourself in some Go High Level. Get yourself some free Microsoft Clarity. Bada bing, bada boom.
Microsoft Clarity. I love Microsoft Clarity, and
why does your tone sound like you don't? What are you about to
say?
I
know. I absolutely, I know. Actually, why I hate it is because I created I love it because I use it so much. But why I hate it is because I tried creating, launching a software company. It was called True Conversion. It was competing with Hotjar. Eventually, Ryan Dice bought that company, which thank you, Ryan. But that product, I severely overestimated like the total addressable market for that product. Everything is also like project based, and I'm glad I got out of that space because when Microsoft Clarity came out, why pay for anything like that ever again? Like you don't need to. It is super free, super useful, and I think it's such an interesting play by Microsoft because they were never ever going to get into the like the analytics game. Google Analytics owns it. They own that side of the space. So why try to go head to head when you say, what about like heat map session recordings, funnels, and these things? And so now they're getting all the same data that Google gets from you, but they packaged that what they give you in return into something very different, which is so smart. And so I love it. Again, just those wounds keep coming back today. They're coming hard. Point.
Remember, when something is free, you are the product.
Oh, 100%.
Remember, if something is free, you are the product. And that's very much the case for Microsoft Clarity, of course. Yeah. Like, it's a trade I'm willing to do. So let's start to wrap this bad boy up. We've got, should you even run the test? Yes or no? Do you have enough data for it to be significantly statistically significant? My human words are broken. There's multivariate. We pretty much never do that on lead gen. There's A/B split test. You do that when it's like you've got a good foundation and you want to test things out, and it's ambiguous. And then we have the sequential. So we can do that. Then you have the heuristic rollouts. When you are going to test, you look at where are the holes in the funnel, which part of the funnel. Then it's cool. What tests am I going to do? You prioritize them with the pie or the ICE framework, whatever. You run the test through a software like VWO or Go High Level, and then you see if it's statistically significant. If you win, again, maybe 20%, if you're freaking good at what you do, will actually win. However, have a good hypothesis so you still learn something. You'll roll out the test as the new control. You'll put it into your changelog. You start the new test from the calendar. Is there anything else that you would add to that?
No, that is exactly it. And actually, I guess the only other thing is to let people know, like you want to be, there is one thing. Yeah. I said no way too soon. You want to be your own like internal marketer. I mean, if you're working with clients, then cool. Like you have to report on this anyways. But if you're working at an organization, you want to celebrate those wins. So like being like, hey, like look at this great thing that happened. You'll notice like this page has changed. That's because this is our new control. Additionally, when a test is running, you'll also probably want to inform people that it's running. Like there's going to be stakeholders who already know, but you should let the company know as well. Just so they're not like, I screwed this up more than I am willing to say. Like I can't tell you like in the last month where it's like, hey, we noticed the homepage like has this thing. I was like, yeah, I forgot to tell everybody. About like, and we just changed one CTA, and it was very noticeable with how we positioned it. We positioned it from a just free, like click here for a free trial to get your domain analyzed, but then it followed the same funnel after the fact. And so people were like, what is this? And I was like, oh, forgot a key step, which is tell people it's live. And then when it does roll out, like celebrate it, let people know. Internal marketing at an organization is so unbelievably important, especially when you're in experimentation, because everybody's going to be kind of looking at like, what are those like experimental marketers doing? Like, what are they even doing with this budget? What are they even doing with this time? And kind of going like the opposite. What would you say you do here? You don't have to answer that question if you're proactive about sharing the wins, sharing the losses, and sharing the learnings as an experimentation department. If you're doing this as client work, that's just the name of the game. You're going to be giving them the kind of the feedback on those. And like, that's less of a reminder because you're always kind of having to like make sure the client knows like how freaking great you are if you're their agency of record.
When you are in CRO, the hardest part is being the champion of CRO and educating the rest of the company. And I'm so glad you brought that up because I would have forgot to say it, but that's so true. Like if you roll something out, the sales team probably got to know. The account managers probably got to know. Like depending on what company you're in, people need to know. So we can't be like little nerds in our dens, like doing these things and rolling these things out and then not telling anybody. And so Justin, today, as we end your interrogation and I cancel the waterboarders because you've done a great job, is there anything I didn't ask you or anything that you would want to add to this, what I think is a really freaking good episode on CRO? I mean, yeah, I'm a bit biased, of course, but I think it's really good.
And yeah, anybody who made it this far, congratulations.
I know, right?
You did it.
For the three of you that stuck around until the end.
Woo!
Golden ticket.
No, I don't think there's anything else. I think just to reiterate that like conversion rate optimization, and I know some people aren't thrilled about that name, but it's like suck it up, buttercup, because people know what this is. So cool. Like, let's not argue about those things anymore. It is so much more than just, again, like statistical significance, split testing, or anything along those lines. You're trying to improve efficiencies in such a way that the user, like the user experience is made. They don't have to think. The user can just kind of go through the flow without having to, jump through hoops, and you're able to kind of, meet them where they're at. So it's more than just like these fun tests for us trying to beat the control or these things. Like you're genuinely trying to speed up the time it takes for them to solve the problem that you solve. Whether you have clients that run like a dental clinic, like you want to make sure that it's really easy for that person with a hurt tooth to get through that funnel so they can book that damn meeting, because they're not thinking anymore. They're not being rational. They're not doing anything. So you have to think in a way that, have you made it so simple that somebody in like severe pain could follow through with this thing? And like, you're like, so CRO is not just, again, split test tinkering and those things. It's genuinely trying to improve the experience such that people can get to their desired end result with the least amount of friction possible, which is a win for them and it's a win for the business. So that's why we exist. That's why these things, like why this like whole practice exists.
Yeah, it's a beautiful way to wrap it up. It's like, hands up if you, like what you do genuinely helps people. Like I hope everybody listening is like, you put your hand up. Well, now your job is to persuade as many people as humanly possible to give you money to work with you so that they get out of this crappy before state and they stop living in this pain. Like, and that's all CRO is. We're just trying to help people. And I think with marketing, we've come such a long way where people just forget that. And it starts to be numbers on a spreadsheet. And there's a human on the other end of our CRO, and we're trying to help them and move them towards something. So Justin, if people want to stalk you, find you, see what you do online, where can they find you? Where should we send people?
Man. Yeah, send them over to my LinkedIn. Like that's probably where I'm most active. I used to be way more active on like Twitter, X, whatever the hell it's called, but I'm not. I just lurk there. But LinkedIn's probably good. I sometimes throw rants out there. They're kind of fun. Current project I'm working on is I'm running growth at Search Atlas, so an AI SEO software. If you're ever interested in checking out like what's going on, you can browse the site. You'll see tests that are running. If you're interested in that, or just interested in that like that, if you're in that space, check it out anyway. So that's my current gig, having a good time there. And yeah, so I think check us out there, and then check me out on LinkedIn, connect, say what's up, say you made it to this moment in time, and I will be like, auto accept, like auto accept if you did that.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on Masters of Lead Generation. Bye.
Thank you so much. So much fun.